Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today and welcome to a Mass Effect 5 news update, which feels very weird to say and I almost feel like I'm dating myself in the process, but 1, 2, 3, Andromeda. Here we are with the next Mass Effect game, so we're going to call it 5. Anyway, this news is a smidge late. I do apologize for that. Over this last weekend, we went to Butler, Pennsylvania for the Last Stand Media event where there was a meet and greet. We threw on a showcase for the greatest games of all time. Your boy represented Toy Story 3. You know how it's done. But anyway, it was an excellent time. And to those of you who I met out there, who I was able to shake your hands, talk about the channel, talk about the content, just talk about life in general, thank you so much. That warm love and support is so needed, especially after the last year and a half of not being able to shake any of the audience's hand and see the people who are watching my video. Thank you so much for showing up. And for those of you who haven't seen it, it'll be live to the public eventually. I'll make sure you all know about that. But today, we talk about Mass Effect 5, where Jeff Grubb made a significant report. If you have been following Mass Effect for years, and really BioWare specifically, you'll know how important this news is. Unfortunately, it will not be applying to Dragon Age 4, but we don't want to write that one away until we actually see the product. So the title of this article is Mass Effect 5 might use Unreal Engine instead of Frostbite. For those who don't know, Dragon Age Inquisition was so successful for BioWare that they were actually annoyed about it because it meant that they would have to use Frostbite, which was terrible for RPGs. And we've seen how catastrophic it's been for this company with the development issues that have been caused in Mass Effect Andromeda, and more notably, I would really say, is in Anthem, where Anthem, its world was lifeless, it was made very quickly, it was a poorly managed product, and a lot of that came down to engine issues, where things that would normally take a number of hours took days and really set the project back consistently. And so now it looks like EA and BioWare are combining to look at other engines, which they should be, for the next Mass Effect game. We'll talk about what that means for Dragon Age 4 as well. So let's get into reading this article and some follow-up tweets from Jeff Grubb. Publisher Electronic Arts and developer BioWare are seriously considering using Unreal Engine for the next game in the Mass Effect series. This information primarily comes from an EA job listing for a technical director for Mass Effect 5. That post says the publisher is looking for candidates who have experience with Unreal Engine or higher. I've confirmed through multiple sources that this is because everything is on the table when it comes to tech for the new Mass Effect. That includes potentially replacing EA's in-house Frostbite engine with Unreal. BioWare is currently working on Dragon Age 4. That game is still on track for a 2023 release according to my sources. That would mean that we wouldn't see Mass Effect 5 until at least 2025. And even in that optimistic scenario, Frostbite could look creaky and ancient compared to something like Unreal Engine 5. The reality is that BioWare is researching all kinds of cutting-edge graphical and technical features that it could implement into Mass Effect 5, and it could easily end up in a situation where the only real, viable, and cost-efficient way of accomplishing that is going with Unreal. But at the very least, BioWare wants to maintain technical parity with the industry, and so it's going to familiarize itself with Unreal, even if they end up sticking with Frostbite in the end. For those who don't know, Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 all ran on Unreal Engine 3, and when they released Mass Effect Legendary Edition, they didn't even port them to the newest version of Unreal Engine because some stuff would be lost in translation, and of course it would increase that workload for them. But BioWare was at their best when they were working on Unreal, because what happens is you see situations like Inquisition, where I think it is a decent game now, but it's very, very flawed. And a lot of that boils down to the way content was handled within Frostbite. I'll always remember when I was playing the Trespasser DLC, and there were moments where instead of companions just merely speaking amongst one another, like you'd see in literally every other BioWare RPG prior to that point in time, they would just speak. You would have to interact with certain things to then listen to Sarah, for example, talk. And it just was breaking the experience, and that doesn't even get into the bloated content, which was just a poor design choice, but was backed by what Frostbite was doing. But the slow-moving nature of Frostbite really locked BioWare into some creative decisions that they may have otherwise tried to reverse. And of course, we've seen it work out for games like, I'd say Battlefront is a really good example. It looks great, it plays great, but because EA wants it to be in-house, it's good for certain games, like we've seen it work well in sports games, at least on a visual level. But when it comes to RPGs, it's just not going to work there. And we've seen EA bend a little bit, right? We've seen them go to Respawn to make a Star Wars game. They come out with Jedi Fallen Order. That was on Unreal Engine. And the reason that they want to do Frostbite is because they don't want to pay the licensing fee that comes with Unreal Engine. But I think when you're a multi-million-dollar corporation, I think it's okay if you spend a little bit of money on Epic to make a better game that will in turn sell more and not be something like Anthem as well as Andromeda. So I think this is a wise step forward, even if it's Unreal Engine 5 and currently it's in its earliest stages where we're seeing how that will develop, but it's much more encouraging than something like Frostbite. Jeff Grubb also did follow up with some tweets on the story saying, at present, EA and BioWare are really considering all possibilities for Mass Effect 5, and a technical director is important to oversee that process. The company wants to embrace next-gen visual tech, and by 2023, when Mass Effect dev starts in full, Frostbite could be far behind Unreal. So while Unreal is a strong possibility, it's also possible BioWare could be looking at Unreal to inform what it needs in Frostbite if it were to stick with EA's in-house tools. But in that process, it seems likely that the devs would just want to stick with Unreal. I think that would make the most sense as well. You don't just build an entire tool set and an engine for your game and then ditch it to then build it again in Frostbite unless EA really did bring down the hammer and say, like, you need to use this engine. But with the success of Jedi Fallen Order really influencing a lot of things happening in BioWare, I'd be shocked if this was something that they died on a hill for. So I feel like if they move to Unreal Engine to figure out the tool set, they will then stick there, which will absolutely be better for the game. But what this also means is that Dragon Age 4 is currently still stuck on Frostbite. And that means that we don't want to write it away, but it's one of those moments where you go, damn. You know, because you know there's going to be some kinks, there's going to be some things off with it immediately thanks to that engine. And once again, this just goes back to the tragedy of Anthem and what occurred with that game during its development, where BioWare could not really reverse course ever on certain decisions, like baking and lighting in a certain area would take hours upon hours upon hours, and that is not normal for an engine. So with Frostbite and BioWare, it just never, ever ended up working out. And I'm hoping that after two very significant lessons being learned, that we can move on from that part. Now let's talk a little bit about that 2025 date, all right? Because we're hearing that once, presumably, Dragon Age 4 is out in 2023, it's all full speed ahead for the next Mass Effect game. Really more so seeing the game for the first time, probably in a trailer of something. And that's crazy to think about. Have you ever thought about that? Just a side note here of when you see these dates, like, oh, it's coming in 2025. Oh, that's only like 4 years from now. What will your life be like then? What job will you be in? Where will you be living? I don't know. It's thoughts that run through my mind. But alongside that, I like that they seem to be really taking their time in creating an internal roadmap. This is something that I think was missing for a while because of how they tried to move into the live service area. I think they put a lot more chips on the table than people give credit for when it came to developing Anthem and saying, like, okay, we want to make this live service game to make BioWare even more sustainable. And in turn, it did so much damage that they had to go back and say, all right, to the drawing board we go. What do we have to do here? And they started to set out what seems to be Dragon Age 4 and then the next Mass Effect game. And I think it's good to see them get back to basics at the end of the day. And this isn't including the potential of them looking at something like a Dragon Age Legendary Edition, which Jeff Grubb also reported was something that could happen, but currently he has not heard anything on it. And I would trust him on BioWare sources. He led this channel to the Holy Land when it came to the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. I mean, literally every single update was by him. And then in turn, I would report it here. So I trust him when it comes to BioWare stuff. And 2025, I'm fine with it. I'm at this point with BioWare where they have had such a rough patch. I think patch might even be putting it generously. But it's been such a long stretch of bad times for them. I'll wait as long as it takes, right? This is a company that more than anyone in the industry I can think about, I want to see get back on track. I know it will never be quite like the times of KOTOR and then Jade Empire and then Mass Effect and then Dragon Age Origins. I don't think they're going to begin spitting out banger after banger, especially with the way that game development is starting to get longer and longer. It's starting to cost more money, so you have to be even more wise in your design pitches. I totally understand that, but I just want to see them become a good studio once again. I want to see another strong release from them. That's not a remaster, by the way. And so if that takes another couple of years, that's great. And that's why it's good to hear yet again that the game Dragon Age 4 is coming out 2023 and not 2022, where that would be like, sound the alarms, we are in trouble, they are rushing it out. 2023 gives them enough time to get this done, especially because, if you don't remember, there have been a lot of stories circulating about, hey, they were going to make this live service game, they pulled out those elements, and they've retuned it into a single-player experience. Now, we'll see if they bring, like, that Avengers energy, where it's like, I can still see the multiplayer that was here in this game, but maybe they got some good smoke and mirrors set up to hide those elements. We'll see, but the more time spent working on these games, as always, the better. We can only cross our fingers that BioWare will find themselves with these next two projects, and of course, I'll be covering everything they're doing up until that point. But for now, that's all I've got for you on Mass Effect 5. I know it sounds silly to talk for a long while on the engine, but this has serious long-term impact on the success of this studio, because Frostbite, once again, there are stories out there, it was so annoying for them to work on it. Like, when Dragon Age Inquisition was received really well, and it did really well and it won Game of the Year, the studio was upset because it meant more RPGs on Frostbite, and you saw what happened afterwards. So I really hope, if at anything, this video just reaches BioWare, reaches EA, they can see this and go, hey, our long-term fans know what happens when they work on Frostbite consistently. Let Dragon Age 4 be the final Frostbite game. That's all I'm saying. They've had enough time now to work with the engine where hopefully they've learned every kink, bump in the road, obstacle that it could present, but move to Unreal Engine after this. Of course, making games will always be hard, but make it less hard for yourself in terms of time consumption. And that's all I've got to say on this topic. So let me know what you're thinking about Mass Effect 5. Crazy to say again. In the comments down below. I'm looking forward to seeing what is on your mind. Other than that, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. And a big thank you to all the patrons, all the members who continue to support the content here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.